Europe this year had its ups, and it had its downs. But what it mostly had was a healthy spoonful of injustice. Right now, of course, over on stream, we are doing the transfer window at the beginning of Season 6, Building a Nation with MTK Budapest. You're definitely going to want to join us after you've watched this video because our transfer budget this year is somewhat spicy, but more on that in a bit. And of course, the VODs of all the streams can be found over on the second channel, linked in the description. They go up the day after airing. Our tales of joy and woe in Europe will, of course, be coming up later in the video too, as I have some words around about that, along with a sneak peek at some analysis tools that I'm going to be doing a video on later in the week. But for now, Season 5 of Building a Nation began with uncertainty. We did not know which players were going to still be at the club at the end of this window, especially with a lot of players leaving. In addition, we had a huge influx of new players that we had no idea where they were going to fit into this team and where changes would have to be made. But without further ado, let's get stuck into transfers. But first, the players that left the club this season, because there's actually something here that we need to talk about. The first of those was Nathaniel Chalobah, who rejoined a team in Nigeria after a little and somewhat, you could argue, bad spell in this league. Some of you will be familiar with him if you are new to my content from Zealand's video about Wonder Kids the other day. Except the plan was that he'd be released during this summer. And then this happened as I tried to release him. I thought it was going to be he's complaining about being released. Oh no! That is an extremely me thing to do, but luckily, even though he had 3 years left on his contract, we were able to offer him out to Quarry United, and he moved there for £40,000. But it was the final major out of this period that is the one that we really need to talk about, because there is a story behind him, and my goodness, did that one go off the rails. And that story is the story of JeanLouis Riviere, who you might notice is currently playing for us, but that is only on a loan spell. That expires this summer, and he hasn't really played that much this year. We were just doing our business in the transfer window, no big problems there. And we got out of nowhere a £700,000 bid from, I believe it was Juventus, for Riviere. However, we'd been looking at another young player from Croatia who you'll see, because he has joined us a little bit later in the video, and did wonder if maybe we could do a little bit of a switcheroo. So we did what any reasonable team would do. We engaged in a bidding war. We accepted that bid and then offered him out for $2 million just to see if anyone else would take a bite. And would you believe, Milan were very, very interested in that, and they put straight down on the table £2 million dead up front. So we just continued the bidding war, accepted that bid, and then just offered him out for £3 million. And would you believe Juventus came in and said, yeah, we'll give you 3, no problem, bruv. This continued staggering all the way up until it got to the point where the board started just accepting the offers out from underneath us, which I do think is really stupid when we're literally trying to sell the player. They shouldn't be accepting offers from because they're too good to turn down when you're the one that's offering the player out. He chose to sign the contract at Milan, and we got £6.5 million for a player that we signed for free but 2 years earlier. The loan farm has also really started to improve this year. All of the players you're seeing here, almost all of them I would say, are on loan to Hungarian sides now, and there's a lot of talent in there. So this is very, very good news for us, and I'm really excited to see what they can do. Some of them have done mad things already this season. Now, since there have been an enormous influx of signings over the last season due to all the stuff we've been doing with the amateur scouting and the Brazil stuff, and I'm sure you've all seen the videos about that, we've been really putting that into action so far in this save. Some of the signings that are less important will be slightly glossed over, but you'll still see all of them because there's some really important ones that we need to talk about. So let's get into the giant lump of signings. First up, Junior Portilla, 5-star potential goalkeeper, lacks a bit of aerial reach, okay reflexes though, but for free. Next there was Brena Maecha from Colombia. He's currently on loan at Budapest Honvéd, another of the free amateur players, but a really talented player. Next is a better one, Felix Sequeira. You might notice he's now got 6 caps for Costa Rica. We noticed him in the Costa Rican under-21 national team. We're able to pluck him straight out of obscurity in there, bring him to the club, and he's been pretty much a starter for us this season. 23 games started, 7 off the bench appearances too. Then there was Zeus Ascension, the Curaçao international. Of course, we mostly signed him because his name is Zeus Ascension. You're not going to pretend that you wouldn't do the same thing. He's now out on loan at Giamot. Sorry, not out on loan. He's actually a permanent signing for them of £4,000. But hey, we did a good. Next was Aurélien Marty, who was picked out of the French amateur leagues, but was actually in the France under-19 squads. Now, he's not played any senior football for us this season, has mostly played in the under-19 squad, as well as obviously our UEFA Youth League team, who remarkably won their group, incredibly. They won 7 out of 8 games in the Champions League UEFA, Youth League thingy, and he was the man. 34 appearances, 25 goals, and 29 assists for him, which is utterly mental. This season, he's going to come up to the first team and probably find himself alone, but you'll notice that he's currently wanted by Inter and Juventus, so there is a potential for maybe a massive sale instead. This is where things start to really take off a little bit. This is Scottish striker Jordan Ross. He was wanted by Manchester United when we were able to pick him up. The biggest downfall with him for me is his speed, but he's still a very solid player other than that. The one downside as well other than that is of course his high wages, but having found a loan spell at Kekskmet this season, I think that's really helped him. Hasn't scored a lot for them, but just getting that experience at an early age is super helpful. But then a real piece of quality. This This is Marius Heremans, 19-year-old Belgian, again, plucked out of the amateur leagues for us and straight into the first team. 37 appearances this year, 9 goals as well, playing as a sort of backup to Brahim Diaz, even though he's got a bit annoyed at me because of that exact factor. But at the end of the day, he can't expect to play ahead of Diaz, but he's still an extremely talented player. Then there's insane striker Christopher Owono, amateur player picked up from Brass Series in Cameroon. I mean, I don't need to tell you why he's good. Driven personality, 18 acceleration, 16 pace, 18 agility. Dribbling's great, first touch is great. If he can just get that finishing composure a little bit up, I think there's an extraordinary player here. 8 goals in 9 starts for us this year. He's pretty much just been our backup player. Played a lot in the league during the early stages of European qualification and whatnot, but he'll be around for a long time to come, and I'm excited about him, and he's actually wanted by someone, intriguingly, and it's PSG. That should tell you everything. Next was Jorge Nuno Passos, a freebie from Rio Tinto in Portugal. Another right back for us, but when you find a guy that's got this kind of physical, he's so well-rounded, it was impossible not to want to sign this guy. Then there's Jacob Larkin. Attribute-wise, for me, he is absolutely exemplary. Even if his potential might not be there, he feels like the type of player to me that is going to find hopefully a really nice stable loan spell, or just a permanent move to a side in Hungary where he can really, really excel. I think he still gets USA caps at some point, potentially. Little low aggression, but everything else on him is really good. Then there's Pape Faye, who is just astonishingly good. Currently out on loan at Budapest, who are one of the better sides in our league, especially this season. The one thing that lets him down is that inability to be fast. He has no acceleration or pace, but the rest of his attributes are stunning. So part of me hopes that maybe he could still be good, just not for us. But then there's this chap. This is Josef Ehring, the Croatian striker with 2 under-21 caps for them as well. He was the replacement to JeanLouis Riviere, and you can sort of see why we were interested in this guy. He's just so well-rounded. Cost us £60,000 in the end. He is not as good in some ways as Riviere. His finishing is lower, composure is lower, but he has got that speed. He's very well-rounded for someone who's only 20 years old, and he was 18 when he signed for us, I believe. No, can't have been, must have been 19. But this year, 37 goals for us in all competitions. Then there's Alfie Dorrington on loan from Spurs. He mainly just came in to give us a bit of centre-back backup as we were a little bit light in that area, and has actually done pretty well for us this season, really. One of our better performers. Then back to the freebies with Angolan international Manuel Dala. He's just outrageously good. Physicals, mentals, solid technicals as well, can play on both sides, on both feet. I mean, it's the dream, really. I feel like he's got 100 caps for Angola written all over him, and I think long-term, he could be one of our stars in the future. He's so good. Then there was another paid-for signing. This is Ari, a Brazilian. £105,000 we paid for Ari, but we needed a new anchor, someone that could give us a bit of backup there, and a guy with 16 marking, 17 tackling, and 14 positioning, good on both feet, seemed to really fit the bill. So for 100k, we were happy to make that work. Then there's Eduardo Peredo. Now, he's a strange one. It cost us 2.2k. Again, I think I highlighted him in the Brazil video. He's got better. When we signed him, he was 4-star potential. Now it's gone up to 5, and he's genuinely excellent. Now, the problem is that on his debut, he was sent off for like 2-footing someone 15 minutes in, and he's only made 1 substitute appearance since, but I really do feel like this guy's the long-term solution to our left side. I really like him. And the last signing was another Belgian amateur. It was Patrice Omgba. We've just been calling him Oh My God Bar, but like, what's not to like about him? Mentals are fantastic, solid temp poles. He's just really well-rounded, got good jumping reach. He's not the slowest either. He's fantastic and has played 10 matches since he came in. Him and Flavian Moores have just been partners of dreams as far as that stuff goes. And again, he has 5 under 21 caps for Belgium as well. Belgium in this save is rocking. God, that's a lot of players. I hope you're still here. Now, tactically, there were actually some changes this season. The first of those was to make an anchorman. We tried this right at the very start of the season. It was a suggestion from chat, so shout out Grenans for that. We thought we'd just test it out instead of a ball-winning midfielder, because a lot of you said it worked well for you, and truth be told, it does work well. So if you're struggling to get good ratings off of a sort of defensive style midfielder, as in a tackly midfielder, try an anchorman. They seem to do really, really well and just works really well in our team. The other change is that at certain points in the season, I noticed that we were shooting way too much into the side netting, especially from our wide players, including the fullbacks, and people just shooting from stupid angles. So every single player in our tactic now has shoot less often on them, other than Ehring, who obviously, because he's the striker, and it's made some serious differences to the types of chances we're creating. Despite getting off to a slightly shaky start, drawing our first 2 matches against Ferencváros and Puskás, we then set out and went on a 4-game winning run to put us in a nice position, as that then left us second in the league after 6 matches, only 2 points off the top and looking very strong. We then flew into an insanely good run of wins after that, barely even conceding a goal here and there, mostly just putting teams to the sword before eventually falling to a 1-1 draw against Ferencváros, although admittedly it took a 93rd minute equaliser from JeanLouis Riviere of all people on loan to grasp that result for us. Wasn't super hard to get back to winning ways ways, though, with 4-1 and 5-0 victories, along with a 1-0 victory over Kisvárda. But then, unfortunately, we did suffer our first defeat of the season away at Újpest, and it was at this point that I decided to make those changes after we'd spurned so many opportunities in this game into the side netting. We then had the Christmas break, and then an unfortunate result was the one where Pereira was sent off on his debut for us, saw that Jordan Ross for Kexmet, on loan from us, score the equaliser to end our run. Then we entered a 5-game winning run again without barely conceding a goal, as Ehring was really starting to hit the back of the net more often. And after 23 games, we were now 9 points clear at the top and looking pretty much formality for the title, but who would get second spot was very much up in the air, with both Ferencváros and Újpest tied on 49 points. But an extremely straightforward end to the season saw us win the league very, very comfortably in the end, with just the draw against Újpest and the draw against Budapest Honvéd to finish things off. As in the end, we won the league by 15 points, 84 points on the board this year, one shy of the record we set last year, but Újpest actually snuck into the Europa League spot instead of Ferencváros, so a poor time for them. Andriy Shevchenko may not keep his job after this. Flavian Moores won Player of the Year. Ehring ended up with 21 goals in the end, despite having like 5 at the Christmas break. He was really on it in the second half of the season. Pereira was again fantastic, and we just had another lovely season. So let's talk about Europe. Starting off with an easy one, beating Levadia 7-1 on aggregate with a 3-1 victory in the away game to sneak through really easily to the next round. Then we were able to get a mark of revenge against Levski Sofia, who had knocked us out of Europe a couple of seasons ago by 6-0, beating them 4-1 to take them out of the Champions League. But that then set up an incredibly tough playoff round draw against Celtic, and that was not going to be easy for us. But an incredible 2-0 victory in the home leg with Brahim Diaz, Mr. European specialist, and Moses Jarju's goals actually gave us a chance, because it was a very, very tight game that we were very fortunate to get the result we did. But then we pulled off the impossible by getting a victory at Celtic Park. Furuhashi gave them a very early lead, and we expected the world to come down on us before Josef Ehring took over, firstly providing an absolutely brilliant assist for his teammate Brahim Diaz, before then taking matters into his own hands and producing an absolute worldie of a finish to give us a 4-1 aggregate victory over Celtic and put ourselves into the Champions League group stages for the first time in the club's history, I believe. And with that, obviously, the riches that come with it. So we've made mondo money this season. But of course, with the Champions League comes the Champions League groups. And obviously, virtually everyone is better than we are. We expected a tough time. But remarkably, Brahim Diaz, after 9 minutes, gave us the lead away at Wolfsburg before Patrick Wimmer got the equaliser by half-time. We were able to hold on and then missed a chance like this.
In the oh, hang on. Ehring's in. Oh, die, please. Oh, for fuck's sake. Buddy.
We then followed that up with an absolutely phenomenal victory away at Antwerp, 3-0. Novak and Pereira absolutely ran the show, and suddenly we got 4 points on the board, and we're thinking, you know what? Could we even get top 24 and actually qualify out of this group? And then things got even better for us as Brahim Diaz gave us the lead early on against Bayern Munich. Admittedly, this goal was absolutely messy as hell match engine-wise, and I was a little bit embarrassed seeing it go in. But we then got exactly what we would expect from that, which is the same kind of stuff happening to us at the other end, as Sadio Mane pulled out a 95th minute equaliser for Bayern. We were this close to beating them, but what I would say is that our goalkeeper made an insane amount of saves in this game and thoroughly deserved everything up until he did a Jordan Pickford. Unfortunately, our preponderance to concede late goals continued into the next match. Josef Ehring had given us the lead away in Portugal before goals in the 91st, and then directly from the kickoff in the 92nd minute allowed Porto to turn it around. We pissed away so many points in stoppage time in the last 2 matches. Now, I don't think we deserved points in those games, but bloody hell, when you get to stoppage time, you should be getting them, particularly as we got extremely unlucky in the next game. A really strong performance was cancelled out by Christoph Baumgartner's goal from the middle of nowhere, which unfortunately meant that we then lost this game as well. Thankfully, the quality showed back up again against Shakhtar as Diaz, Pereira and Ndai were able to score lovely goals to give us a beautiful victory and pull ourselves back up into the battle for the top 24, which of course qualifies you for the knockouts. This was then followed up with a really strong performance away at Inter after we'd made those tactical changes, created really good chances, but we're just unable to take them, and Mateus Cunha was able to score some insanely good finishes, one of which looked marginally offside, but it is what it is. And then sadly, in our final group stage game, the 8th game, we went ahead at home against Benfica through Christopher Owono, who had to start the game due to Ehring being ill, but then unfortunately Petar Musa and then Beto's goals gave Benfica enough to get them over the line. I feel like if we'd had Ehring in this game, we probably could have done better, because he's just that much better in front of goal, or certainly was this season. And he's probably sitting there thinking, okay, where did you finish and how did you exactly get screwed? You're thinking, oh, well, some of the results were a bit unlucky, but that's hardly being screwed. And you're right, that is not how we got screwed. Let's talk about this, shall we? All of that left us 26th. We missed out in the end on, this is where it gets funny. We missed out on head-to-head because we had the same number of points as Ajax and Dinamo Zagreb. Ajax were the ones that actually got to qualify for the next round of the Champions League based on that. And you might think, head-to-head, But how head-to-head when did not play against teams? Interesting, isn't it? So if I show you the head-to-head between Dinamo Zagreb, Ajax, and MTK Budapest, which is how it decides who goes through, we were knocked out of the Champions League because we didn't play against either of those two, but they drew against each other, and thus that means they're better than us. Put it this way, there was no way that we could have won the head-to-head. It is physically impossible. If Dinamo Zagreb had beaten Ajax, they would have finished above us, and Ajax would have finished below us, and then the other way around. There was no way that we could have possibly won the head-to-head despite not getting to play against either of them. The worst thing about it as well is we actually had a better goal difference than both of them, which means if it was using goal difference, we'd have gone through. And to me, at the moment with this system, I can only see goal difference being the fair way to do this, because you can't use head-to-head when you don't play against any of the teams. What I would say is, I believe this is a case where SI have had to basically just go, well, we don't know what UEFA are going to do with this system yet, so let's just port over what was in FM last year.
Should I make a song about it? I've lost a head-to-head against two teams we did not fucking play. I've lost a head-to-head against two teams we didn't fucking play. It's like a sea shanty for the damned.
But it is not a bad first season for us in Europe. Anyway, that's enough about my heartbreak, because there was nothing to show you after Christmas at all, so that's why our title run was fairly easy. Unfortunately, when it comes to the other Hungarian sides this year, it was a little bit of a letdown. With the slight inconsistency of teams qualifying other than us and Ferencváros, it meant that this year we were stuck with Pakshi and Kushvada. And Pakshi, unfortunately, were knocked out of the first attempt as they came up against Danish side Suniusk, so that was always going to be a tough one. Kushvada were able to get past FCSB of Romania for the first round, but then were knocked out comfortably in the third qualifying round by Nice of France. I think it was 7-1 on aggregate. Ferencváros, in a way, did us a favour by not qualifying for the Europa League. They ended up going into the Conference League after being beaten by St. Gallen in the playoff round, but that was good, as we didn't expect that we'd get many points playing in the Champions League this season, so it felt useful to have Ferencváros playing in the Conference League themselves with a chance to get some points. And get points is exactly what they did, coming 8th in their Conference League group, which I'm pretty pleased with after a really poor start, actually, drawing their first two matches, first against Sparta Prague and then against lowly Spartak Trnava as well, left them with only 2 points. This was then followed by a defeat to Luzern, and I was worried for them, really. With 2 points after 3 games, it was not looking good. But then successive wins against Kukaiži, against Wolfsberger, and then an away win against Heerenveen on the final day was enough to see them leapfrog into 8th spot and qualify immediately for the knockout round, as well as skipping a round, which was very nice. And in that round, they would actually face off against Sparta Prague, a team they'd already played and drawn against. Unfortunately, it did not go particularly well, as Sparta Prague beat them 3-0 in the Czech Republic, and then Ferencváros were only able to get a 1-1 draw back in Hungary, and it wasn't enough to see them go through. A bit unfortunate, a bit disappointing, but luckily, that one draw that they got in the knockouts turned out to be absolutely crucial for coefficient. Let's talk about that. As we now, as a result of this season, we're 16th currently, but this season we've now moved up to 13th in the coefficient chart. But you'll note, we finished above Switzerland by 0.1 points above Switzerland. And I'm fairly certain that that draw that Ferencváros got is what saw us over the line. And you might think, okay, 13th, 14th, what's the difference? Everything is the difference. Us moving up to 13th means that not this season, but the season after, we'll have 5 teams in Europe. We're finally starting to move up the rankings to where it really matters, to get into those positions where you actually start to get stuff a little bit more, get those extra teams in Europe. Next stop is 10th, where we get that guaranteed Champions League spot. Now, youth intake. Usually it's an exciting time. This year it was not. This is the best of what's left from our youth intake. We had expected a 2.5-star youth intake, which wasn't great, to be honest. Sorry, Emmett. We actually got a 3-star youth intake, and as it goes, Giovanni Vagari was the one player that stood out of it, and to be fair, he's actually got an upgrade since then. So this is he. He's fine. The problem is we've been getting a lot of players in our last few youth intakes since the start of the save, really, with literally low determination and that as their personality, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because our head of youth development has insane determination, as do almost all of our coaches. So it is kind of weird that we're getting really low determination youth players. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but it's just kind of odd to me. Now, stats-wise this season, this is a little preview of some of the analysis views I've been working on. Obviously, this one's specific for defensive central midfield players, but it kind of covers a lot of bases, so we're just going to use it to show you some players as things are. I'm going to be doing a video about these later in the week, particularly as I've made these that will work on the scouting menus and the shortlisting menus, which will really help you with some scouting. But a video about that coming up next week. But you can see, Ehring with the top scorer, 37 goals this season, which was fantastic. Brahim Diaz was fantastic as well, with his 19 goals this season, along with 8 assists too. Pereira was suitably brilliant, 16 goals, 21 assists. Novak, though, 10 goals, overperformed his XG for once, and 16 assists. He massively improved with the slight tactical tweak this season, and I think he's knocking on the door of a Belgium call-up. And speaking of those, Flavien Moors, he is now a full Belgian international and scored 9 times for us this season from centre-back. He's truly astonishingly good. Point is, everyone has looked extremely good this season, and I've been very, very pleased with the way this team has shaped up. People coming into it are looking very good. I'm really excited for what we can do in the summer, particularly as I've broken a slight cardinal rule and signed a player from another Hungarian side. But we'll talk more about him next season. But if you do want to come and see him, he's over on stream right now. His name is literally Pushkas. You could see why we were interested. That, and he's extraordinary. In terms of lineup this season, it's mostly been pretty much like this, with Airing through the middle, Awono being the sort of backup striker when needed. The wingers have mostly been Pereira and Novak, with Kapralik and Yakubu being the backups. Diaz and Heremans interchanging in those roles as well. Effie and Jarju, along with Kata, and of course Juan Pablo Diaz too, but then Ari after he joined us as well. The right back and left back spots have been played by virtually every player on the pitch, honestly, with Ndai and Larkesh, and on this side, Dala and Da Silva and Sagdal. And we've got a lot of right backs. Defensively, sort of stable towards the end of the year with Ongba and Moors, but also with Dorrington in there too. It's been a lot of that. And then Joao Virginia, just an absolute rock. He's made 53 appearances this season in all competitions. I think he might have played every single match for us this year as Big Joao, to the point where he's actually wanted by some quite large sides, and I believe was actually in a Portugal squad. But now to finances, because you're probably thinking that sort of set you guys up with a large transfer budget, and you'd be right. Our transfer budget for this year is, well, it actually was £9 million, but we've adjusted it. We've got 6.75 million, and a 90,000. Our wage budget has basically doubled. Now, again, we're probably not going to spend most of this money this summer, because I think if we get into the Champions League group stages again this year, then we can start doing the old youth scouting, the proper each nation youth team scouting, and that will really allow us to start that conveyor belt up. But I just wanted that financial stability first before spending loads of money on players with quite high wages when we can't guarantee that we're going to have that income stream every single year. But if we were to get it again, then you just never know. In fact, you might see Andras Pushkas down there, the Debrecen signing for £600,000, already our record signing. But I think there could be a few more of those in this transfer window, and that is what we're doing over on stream right now. Probably not pressing continue for 3 hours, but it's so fun. You know you love it. I love it too. It's brilliant. So join me over on stream for that. If you have enjoyed this video, drop a like, of course. If you're new to the channel and enjoy this and other kinds of FM content, subscribe. Yeah, do it in a Sean Connery voice if you can. And yeah, I'll see you guys over on stream. Happy nation building.